Welcome, everyone. This is Sarah Zakaria, Associate Director of Alumni Relations at University of San Diego, and I'm excited to have you join us today for our Young Alumni Network webinar, Money, 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 Negotiate What's Yours and Understanding What's Not. The USD Young Alumni Network is an official affinity group of the USD Alumni Association and is dedicated to providing the professional development and social networking opportunities for USD alumni who graduated within the last 10 years and are under 35 years old. First, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this afternoon. Before we begin, please be mindful that 1. Today's webinar is being recorded. Access to the replay of this webinar will be found on the USD Alumni website about 1 week from today. So if you need to step away from the webinar and are interested in reviewing it at a later time, the archive broadcast will be posted to the USD Alumni website. On your screen is a control panel with a chat area where you will be able to ask questions. Remember to click on the bubble icon or press enter so that your question or comment is posted. Kara is looking forward to hearing what you have to say, so please submit your questions and we will answer as many as time allows. If you experience technical difficulties, please submit concerns via the chat area. In the event that we all experience technical difficulties during today's webinar, we will attempt to resolve the issue as soon as possible. If we are unable to do so, we will reschedule the session and an email with the new date and time will be sent. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Kara Weller, class of 2002 with a BA and class of 2006 with an MA, brings 10 years of experience in higher education career, human capital management, and marketing to a role as manager of the MBA Career Development at University of San Diego. Kara has presented at domestic and international conferences and contributed to publications on such topics as distance counseling and technology, innovation, and career services. Since 2006, Kara worked with Arizona State University W.P. Carey School of Business, specializing in strategic planning, MBA career management, and corporate relations. Then with the University of Arizona, managing employer development for more than 350 graduate and undergraduate programs. Prior to that, she worked in student affairs at the University of San Diego, where she also earned her master's degree in career counseling and bachelor's degree in political science. Kara holds leadership roles with both the National and Regional Association of Colleges and Employers, and providing expertise on National Ethics Committee and is the Director of Membership and Talent Development. Welcome, Kara. We now turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone so much for joining me today. I'm knee deep right now in my job and salary negotiations since our class just graduated, and almost every day I'm working really detailed through these kinds of negotiations, which is such an exciting part of the job search, but also so stressful. So I'm really glad you're joining me today so that you have tools and resources to effectively salary negotiate, because this is really how you're most able to position your career and feel good about your work. It is just, the jobs are just so difficult, and I give respect to that. You get so many applications out. If you're on the job search, the ratio of applications to interviews is so small. You get through one round of interviews, 2 rounds of interviews. You think you're going to get an offer, and it's so exciting, and that excitement mounts, and then you realize you have to salary negotiate, or you haven't done your salary research and you're not sure what to do, and it's very nervous. So it ends up feeling like such an anticlimactic part of such an exciting process. And I really want to spin that around for you and have it be the icing on the cake, so to speak, so you feel really good about starting that new job, or in some cases ending up declining a job or a promotion if that's what's right for you. So we'll get into that today. I'll have a few quizzes throughout just so I can do some qualification of who you are and what you're looking for. So one thing, just to test that you're awake and have gotten some food in yourself over your lunch hour, use the hand raising function right now on the top of the screen. You'll see a little white person with their hand raised. If you recognize the image of the food truck on the first slide I have here. Awesome. So you know what, that you can go ahead and lower your hands. I see about half of you recognize the food truck. What that does for me is kind of qualifies your years of experience actually, or your age category, I'm guessing, because I'm also part of the young alumni group, but I returned to work here a year ago and I hadn't seen that food truck here on campus. So I thought, okay, you've probably, if you recognized it, most likely graduated in the last few years, and then the other ones are maybe more in that 5 to 10 years of experience range. So that gives me an idea to where to qualify the information I'm going to share with you as we go through, depending on where you are in your career. So the next thing I'd like, if you wouldn't mind, Sarah, is just popping the first quiz out there and asking you how you feel about your current salary or compensation structure. Thank you. As you cast your votes, these are anonymous. I'll end up sharing general percentages back with the group, but I'm not seeing, and you're not seeing with any of your peers what you're sharing on this, on any of these quizzes I'll share throughout the presentation. All right, Sarah, so we have a good amount in if you want to just broadcast the results and then we can continue forward. So what I like here, I'm glad to see, is that most of you, about half of the people, 50% actually, exactly half, are feeling good about where they're at. They just want to verify that. So that's the situation I'm really glad that half of you are in, because that means that you feel like you've probably done good to this point and you're really preparing to position yourself for that next salary negotiation, whether internal in your organization or outside. So that's really the place we want to be at. Another chunk, which is typical of USD, where USD people tend to find employment and people from other universities, is that we might work in an industry segment or sector that is lower salaries than a corporate world. So it looks like about 19% work in nonprofit or government, and that it's generally low all around. And there are some factors to be controlled in this kind of situation, and some that aren't. But I hope to give you some techniques throughout the presentation today that should help with that. So thank you for sharing that information with me on that poll. So what we'll go through today, I'm going to try to present for about 35 minutes and then reserve the end of our time together for any questions. You're also welcome to use the chat function as we go if you have a question that relates to a particular slide we're on. But let me tell you my agenda for today. Some of the most personalized stuff is towards the end. So what I'll cover first is just some general trends in salary. Then we'll talk about what you can negotiate and different pieces that are negotiable. I'll get into talking about compensation philosophy and offer structures that might be foreign right now, but I'll break it down a little bit more what that means. I'll give you some techniques on how to negotiate and review an offer that's presented to you. And then at the end, we'll get into some special circumstances. When you get down to the actual negotiation, there can be a lot that you're juggling, a lot of other things going on, other opportunities, considering the culture you've been in and such. So we'll get into some of those special circumstances and how to deal with that. And then finally, at the end, resources for you to conduct salary research. So as we go along, you'll be hearing me talking about doing a lot of salary research. So I'll provide those tools to you at the end of the presentation. All right, so some general trends that I want to cover with you that can impact your work, particularly as we're part of the Young Alumni Network. What's happening now is that, according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, NACE, that for 2013, the median salary for new graduates is rising. The rate is for the last several years, it's been between 2 and 3%. So the fact that this year the rate is rising about 5.3% in terms of new salaries for graduates coming out of university could affect you if you're a recent graduate. So what I mean by that is perhaps you were in the last couple of years, that rate was only going up by 2 or 3%. And on average, annual increases across the nation are pretty much just covering cost of living adjustments, which is again about 2 to 3%. That means that if you graduated in the last couple of years, there could be new graduates coming in making the same amount of money as you, or even sometimes higher. This poses a challenge, of course, you think personally to you, which is very true, but it poses a larger organizational challenge for companies as well. They're having to really work to balance out some of these trends. How is it that when their competition is bringing in new graduates at 5.3% more base salary than the year before, that they're keeping up with the competition in terms of company to company competition, but also that internal equity with salary structures in their own organizations. So this does pose a challenge. It's not like it's the first year that this has ever happened, but that is a trend that's happening now with the market. You can see that health science majors, their salary increases are the highest according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers for 2013, with a little over about 9.5% over base salaries from last year. And then humanities and social sciences are the lowest in a negative. Those salaries are down. Business tends to be right in about in the middle. I believe it's about 5%, close to the median based on this survey. So NACE does this research every year. It is the premier research organization that companies who hire a lot of college graduates as well as career professionals like myself use for our research and surveying and such. And how to deal with that. So I've told you all about this potential problem. We'll get into in the special circumstances section how you might be able to deal with this particular issue if you are suspecting in this year, or if this continues to rise in the next few years, that this might be affecting your salary. So we'll talk about it a little bit later in the presentation, what that means specifically to you. For those on the call that are a higher level, maybe more in the 10 years of experience range, let's take a look at this, what's happening with executive compensation or higher level positions in the past. So between 2009 and 11, the fixed compensation basically means base salary. So what I'm showing in this slide is that base salaries over the last few years have gone down an average of 10%, while variable factors that contribute to a compensation package have gone up 10%. To me, this is a good thing. This means that companies are holding their executives or leaders more accountable, and they're paying for performance rather than guaranteed compensation, because again, a base salary is the gift that keeps on giving, regardless of performance, unless you're let go. But variable factors are metrics that executive is expected to contribute to or help in an organization. So that's a trend in executive compensation for those that are a little more seasoned on the call. And what we're seeing overall is that employers, so when you're looking at a compensation package, we can talk about salary and the money in your pocket, but there's also other pieces of it, such as retirement contributions, healthcare, and things like that. So one thing that was interesting I found in my research through the World at Work is that the money employers are spending on healthcare costs is the lowest it's been in 15 years, and declining as healthcare costs increase. And these plans are increasing for employers who are being pressured to cut money and budget, particularly those of us working in nonprofit and government sectors. That's one piece that it really ends up affecting your bottom line and my bottom line too. And overall, I hate to start off the presentation with bad news, but it is shrinking. When we're seeing these kinds of group plans being cut, like healthcare costs, and we're seeing generally flat trends where compensation each year is basically going up an average of 2 or 3% on average, where markets are changing in real estate, rental costs are inflating here and there. There's things changing. The bottom line is our bottom line is shrinking. And I'm not an economist, but any economist will tell you that the comparisons of what goods cost from years and years ago till now. I guess you can rest to be sure that it's not just you feeling it, it's everybody feeling it. So what I'd like Sarah to do now, if you wouldn't mind, is pull out the second quiz I have. I want to know what important factors, what is important in the way you work. Really, and I want this answer from your heart. You know, what when you go to work, of course, compensation is important, and you can choose that if you'd like. But what is really important to you, and you enjoying going to work and feeling satisfied? I know I make you pick one. I'm terrible here. So what you'll find is we have about 20 participants I can see on this call. Most any research done in this area, when you ask people what is the most important factor at work for you, it's never usually about money, especially for those who have more work experience and have dealt with issues and challenges at work, potentially a terrible boss, which is the number one reason people quit jobs, by the way. Culture match to companies, not feeling challenged or having opportunity for growth. Just like what is being reflected in this survey amongst the group here today, that's the same for most any survey of this similarity that's given in US business. So I'm seeing about 35% are saying most important is culture match, another 35% opportunities for growth, another 18% of you are saying doing challenging work, and a 6% salary and compensation. What's really particularly interesting about this, and another person says work-life balance. What's really interesting is that when you ask, this information changes based on who you ask. So you ask the worker, you and I, what's most important, and you're seeing the results that you have reflected now. But then you ask um, HR managers, what's most important do you think to your employees, and they'll change it. They have a different opinion of the way that this is lined up, but I'm glad to hear that. So that helps me as we go through this presentation too, talking about other items you might not normally think you can negotiate. When we talk about salary negotiation, we first think money, but there's other pieces of the puzzle too. Thank you, Sarah. You can close that poll when you're ready. All right, so let's go through each of these. And this might be a point where you have some questions, so feel free to use that chat function if you have any specifics as I go through this. We'll go through each column, what is negotiable, what's not usually negotiable, and then really thinking through those intangible pieces that we just covered in terms of what's important to you, those qualitative pieces that aren't necessarily quantifiable. The first thing you want to do if you're able to and you need to negotiate is try for that base salary. So as I said before, that's the gift that's going to keep on giving. That's your bottom line where that annual increase is going to hit, that you always can guarantee that money in your pocket month to month. So that's the first piece, rather than worrying about, again, it might be more important for you vacation time or other perks, but if you're thinking money, that's the bottom line, the base. It's the gift that's going to keep on giving, the base from which your promotions and those incremental increases are going to come, the base in which if you decide to leave for another employer, they're going to ask about your salary history. So that's the number one item. Additional kinds of money. So this could be performance bonuses. This could be based on your performance. This is particularly important, a percent of bonus you may make if you're in a sales role or a new business development role. It could be money based on company performance, or it could be a combination of all of those things. So what you need to do is really just understand when an offer is made to you, what kinds of additional compensation is included and how much you can or cannot control those factors. This also could be, I have it down here as well, but sometimes money is given for relocation within your organization if you're being asked to move, or if you're taking another job that is out of the city or state. So that sometimes can be, basically they'll give you cash in your check to cover that relocation unless they have contract with a moving company or any combination of those. Next, perks. So as I mentioned, this could be things like vacation time. This could be items like a company car or a cell phone, or if you're working from home, compensation for an office setup, any above kind of extras you get in your job, gas card or a car, things like that. So I'm not sure if perks kind of is a bucket for all the other stuff you're getting money for. If you're wondering if something particular is included in that bucket, you can let me know and I'll be happy to answer it. One item, if you are feeling like you you really want the job, but you're hitting a wall with the other items you're trying to negotiate, could be a review time. So you'll want to find out how often the company formally reviews its employees. This could just be an annual review. For some companies, it could be quarterly. It just depends on the organization. But one thing you can do if you make a commitment with an organization that you're going to start employment there, you aren't able to get anywhere on salary negotiation, and you find out reviews aren't for a year, well, perhaps you can request that you have a review in 3 or 6 months after your start date, particularly if you're in a role where you feel your performance, like I said, a sales or a business development role, where you are a revenue generating person or a revenue savings person. That could be finance, supply chain with an organization. And you can say, look, I realize you can't make much of a move now with my salary, but would you mind reviewing my work in 3 months? If I've proven myself and exceeded the goals you've set forth for this position, can we talk at that time about considering my salary package? And I've seen that be able to be a negotiable piece. So don't hesitate away from asking for a review a bit sooner. Let's see. So I mentioned when I say not so much, the not so much category is really fitting in most group plans. So anything that your business subscribes to on behalf of all employees, those are difficult to negotiate. And you can see what falls into that category in this column. I do want to bring up, though, let's take insurance coverage, for example. Well, you want to find out how soon your insurance coverage starts. When I was with the state of Arizona, both ASU and then U of A, I'm glad I started when I did, because what was happening the last year of employment there was that any new employees through the university system, the Board of Regents, were not getting insurance paid for 6 months after their start date. Well, I knew for a fact that they were paying, I mean, between what I was paying and they were paying, it was between four, I think my portion of the insurance was about 400 a month, and their portion was about 400 a month. So what that would mean is any new employees going to have to pay a minimum probably of $800 a month for their family to have insurance coverage times 6 months. So you do the math. That is something that you can ask for money for up front to cover your cost of needing to pay for insurance between when you start and when that date starts. You may not get it, but I've definitely seen a few people negotiate this because they've needed to. They found out insurance doesn't start for some time, and that can be really impactful to your bottom line, particularly if you're making a lateral move and your salary isn't increasing a significant amount from one job to the other. So make sure we'll get into really looking through a package and what is all included, because I would just be really disappointed for you to be hit with a surprise like this after you accept an offer. And so I question sometimes why vacation time isn't in this category, because usually organizations have certain categories of vacation time based on level of employee. But I've seen students go to major organizations and negotiate extra salary time, big tech companies, a big petroleum company that I wouldn't have normally thought would have been willing to consider something like that, but that they've made it happen. Also, depending on the manager that you're negotiating with and your particular manager, you may be able to take extra time, but it's not paid. At least you're able to take that time if that's something that's important to you. Particularly for those of you on the call who are in nonprofit or government and maybe do have the benefit like I do at University of San Diego with a good chunk of vacation time, and you're thinking, well, to make more salary, maybe I need to go into a corporation, a for-profit corporation. And sometimes those cultural differences are there with less vacation time. And so that's a big lifestyle adjustment, but it is something you can discuss. And then finally, what we hit on in the quiz is there's no way to really put a number on this, but let's say you're juggling offers and there's one company you're really feeling that you connect with and you love the manager and the position seems challenging. They have it just matches your values basically, even though it might be a little bit less money. And I can't define that for you. I can't define what a little bit less money is or how much these things are worth to you, but they're definitely there. And again, when I asked you about what's important in the satisfaction of your work, most of you said that it was about growth, challenging work, company culture. Well, that's what most people say, and there's not really a price tag on that. So just to think through what's important to you and what that means in terms of you accepting employment or not, and overall what's worth negotiating. And then the last thing, all of you, you can raise your hand on the if you'd like, if you're here in San Diego. All right, so at least 5 of us are in San Diego, and we might know what sunshine tax means. It looks like about 10 of us are in San Diego. So I probably guarantee the rest of the people on the call are making more money than the other 10, because what sunshine tax is you're basically, there are some markets in the United States and internationally that are you're paying for the lifestyle that that city comes with. And this drives me crazy. I love San Diego so much, and I'm here and I'm willing to pay the sunshine tax, but we're in a high cost of living. I have resources for this, but it's through the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can look up cost of living based on different cities. There's a number of calculators out there that show cost of living differences from city to city. So not only here in San Diego are we in a high cost of living, but we are in a the data I find doesn't quite speak to, I can't say the data is not true, but basically in my experience, salaries are a little lower than national average. The same coming from a similar market in the Southwest, Phoenix, and consistently seeing students taking jobs across the country and experiencing the difference between Phoenix and San Diego myself and having this knowledge of the job market. I tell students that I suspect salaries are about a third less here in San Diego. Maybe not, and I'm stopping here for a minute. Maybe not based on national averages of a given salary, but I'd say comparable cities living in. So it's almost, I'd say, a third less, and then cost of living is about a third more. And I'm probably being a little bit liberal here, but we end up having a lot less earning power as the bottom line. We're paying sunshine tax, we're paying for where we're at. And so what this means to you in particular is how important is location and geography to you. When I'm working with people one-on-one, this discussion becomes important, because where do you want to be? Where do you want to work? Do you realize you'll be making less and cost of living is more? How does that play into your deciding factors? And the other piece it means to you is if you're considering relocation, and if your company asks you to relocate. So there could be, I had a person last year I was working with who was working in Phoenix, asked to relocate to London. Well, those are two hugely different markets, and London does, to some extent, you're never going to quite get your earning power back going to London, but this was a time for him to be able to negotiate with his company, get the right tools from me to figure out at least what he could ask for in terms of that salary being shifted because of the new market. All right, so moving into compensation structures and offer structures. So basically, this is what you see here are 2 different cases. You're seeing one example that's pretty common, and then another example that's pretty common, and I'll walk through each of these. So this is basically the first one, well, it tells you how your offer is structured, but it's enlightening you on the larger, not just your offer, but how compensations are structured within companies. Most large companies have a team of people that are working all the time and only on compensation analytics. I have a friend doing this role at GoDaddy. Also, you can see in case 1, this is the example in my experience of Intel Corporation and HP. Intel and HP have people, as I said, that are really doing research and analytics to make you the best offer based on that company's position in the market and other things. So they're looking at an analysis of, as you can see, the market value. So what I mean by that is the market value of the position, the talent and workforce available. And this isn't my full-time job, but I'm giving you my interpretation of it. So this is the market available in the geographic market you're in, the talent gap or availability of a particular function, the available talent for the industry. They are looking at your current salary or your salary history, And if you're a brand new graduate, there's not a lot you can do about this. They do have structures for new people they're bringing in from university too that are structured in similar ways. And the other piece is they're looking at the team salary. So going back to that second slide when I was talking about trends, where this year it's increasing 5.3% for new grads, but over the last few years it's just been 2 or 3%. Well, that's going to affect the team salary in which you're fitting in. And so basically what they're trying to do is be very fair and equitable in these offers. They don't want to bring that new grad in at 2 to 3% higher than somebody that was hired the year before, right? So they're having to make adjustments as they're going and make offers based on all of this kind of data. What this means to you is that not every offer is negotiable. I had someone recently be employed with HP, and these kinds of offer structures will basically tell you that it's a firm offer. And when you hear those words, that it's a firm offer, that they've looked over, done everything they can, talked to HR, reviewed your information, and this is their best, most competitive offer. Basically, that's what it is. So these organizations are striving to make you a fair and best offer, and that happens. So not every time do you have to negotiate. So let's look at case number 2, which is a salary range. If they do tell you any information about a particular position you're applying for, most likely what you're going to get is a range. Very rarely do you see a set number. Sometimes you do, and it's quite nice to know, because I don't know about you, but what I do is when I see a salary range, I'm thinking, that top end of the range looks awfully good to me. I think I could do that, maybe, right? So it's again more of a science to it. What they're doing is when you see a range like this, most likely you'll get offered 50% of the range, or what we call midpoint. So that's where you can see here that it's that $75,000 range between this range. Frankly, this is a huge gap between, rarely at this level are you going to see a $30,000 spread, but just for sake of making the numbers easy, I made it like that on here. So what it means is that this is the 50% mark. Let's say right about here's the 80% mark. So the way compensation, the kind of way the compensation science works is that when companies follow this methodology, is that at the 80% mark, they assume you're performing to full capacity within that role you've been hired for. At the 50% mark, when you're moving up from the 50% to 80%, there's training involved, there's getting to know the internal workings of the business, getting to know your clients, so on and so forth. Who knows, that could take between 6 months and a year, depending on our specific backgrounds, all right? So they want to give you some wiggle room between hiring you at that 50% mark and moving you up to that 80% mark where you're fully performing in that role. The remaining portion, that 80% to 100%, is giving you some opportunity to grow in the role and continue to be incentivized before there's a position that they can move you into for that next level, right? So if you're at 80% and there's not going to be another role to promote you into for 4 years, they want to keep you there and incentivize you to bring you to that high end of the range so you're not sitting there too long at the high end of the range without another position to move into. So that's generally the philosophy behind why you might be offered midpoint of the range and how it works. This kind of structure does allow you more time to, not more time, but more negotiation wiggle room, if you will. These kinds of, when you realize you're being offered midpoint of a range, what you should do is if you feel you have any specific skills or experiences that constitute a higher end of the range, do share that with the person you're negotiating with or ask them if they've considered it. So what I mean by this is, let's say you've worked in that organization before, so you won't have much training involved in terms of pieces of the training they're considering. You speak a foreign language that would be really beneficial to the role. You have done that kind of a job at a key competitor that you can bring new ideas, and again, like where you don't have to be considered to train as much as the average person coming into that role. Those are the kinds of pieces that are very objective, where you can say, thank you so much for the offer of $75,000. I just want to be I just want to be certain you did consider the extra skills that I bring to the role to be constituted what I feel would be a higher level, more around the 80 or 90% mark of the range. And then going into the details of what those skills you feel are, or being certain that they considered that. All right, so moving forward, and again, feel free if you have a burning question to use the chat function. Otherwise, I will reserve time at the end as well, and we can go back to any of these slides. I'm going to just quickly go through these next slides, and when these slides are available, as Sarah mentioned, in a few weeks, you'll be able to go back to these websites. Right now, I'm going to take a second and guide you through the Security and Exchange website, so you can find out about compensation philosophies. So this isn't going, those of you who are in government or nonprofit on the call, which I noticed may be close to half, this won't be as relevant, but what it will be relevant for is just knowing where you can go do some pieces of research or how different compensation philosophies are structured. So basically, every public company has to file one of these proxy statements. You can see I have the DEF 14A. It talks about all kinds of information that if you're like me and like to analyze things, you can really dive in and get a lot out of this. So it's going to tell you, it specifically tells you how compensation is set for executives. That's what they have to file for. It'll also talk about how they compare themselves to competitors and performance metrics for both executives and employees. And this is where the last two pieces is it gives you additional insight. So are they, when they list out who those executives are they're sharing the compensation on, is the executive that's related to your particular function listed? So let's say you're in marketing. Is your CMO listed in there? Or have they skipped past the CMO and only chosen to list the CEO, the CFO, and the Chief Information Officer, let's say? So the relative importance of functions can be one thing. And then when you are able to look at pay differentials between executives, that should give you some insight. Is this a individual-based organization or more of a team-based organization? How much do I have control over the metrics in my performance on the job, if that makes sense? And so I'll go into this just a little bit further. Here is, and I have a good example. So basically from sec.gov, the Security and Exchange Commission, you can click over here on filings. And then I have 3-step directions to look up where those filings are. Again, public companies, so if it's a smaller private company, you're probably not going to find the data in this tool. And at the end, again, I have other resources. So I went and grabbed 2 organizations and grabbed a piece from their compensation philosophy that I found on the Security Exchange website. One was PetSmart, major retail organization. I found this statement on page 31 of their compensation philosophy, and then I went and grabbed Google, and this was on page 34. 2 major organizations, Fortune 500 organizations, but 2 very different compensation philosophies. I went and saw, I'm kind of excited that I had Google on here because I went and saw the movie, The Internship, this weekend. Great movie if you haven't seen it. But you could really sense in the movie that this, how this philosophy really lives in Google, that basically what I got out of this compensation philosophy is that our compensation philosophy applies to everyone, including our executive officers. That really flat organization that you sense based on that first statement within their compensation philosophy. And not only that, but where their target is as an organization in terms of who positioning themselves as an employer of choice compared to their peer market or their competitors, basically where they're competing for talent, is they want to be at 90%. And they want their total comp to be 90 to 95%. So they're setting the standards based on their competition for the highest level pay for that talent. And then I saw something a little bit different in PetSmart. I saw a lot pay for performance, you see right up front, but you also see more of an individual focus. It actually says it right there, individual executive goal attainment, and then the collective performance of the company as a whole. And so that really, I mean, depending on your role within the organization, these are 2 just very different statements. And so, like I said, every company has this through the Security and Exchange Commission. So I'd encourage you to do some research if you are on the corporate side. All right, so now getting into the nuts and bolts of it. This is probably where you want to start taking some notes because we're going to really talk in depth about exactly how you do this. So you should raise your hand if you think you should initiate the salary conversation. I see some peer pressure going on here. I saw one person raise their hand and then a few others. So I would love to hear at the end why you feel, those that selected that they feel they should initiate the salary conversation, why you think that, because my advice, there could be special circumstances, but my advice is you should not. You should wait until the salary conversation is initiated to you, and oftentimes that won't be until they're ready to make you an offer. And this can be an extremely frustrating time, and when you don't know what they're paying and you aren't sure, but all really I would encourage you to do up until that conversation happens to you is to do research the best you can, to go on Glassdoor, salary.com, Robert Half salary reports, a whole bunch of other tools I provide for you at the end of this presentation you'll have access to. Call me, call Career Services once you have that research and get some general opinion on a range that's realistic. But that's the best you can do to really empower yourself to know what the range is and to be ready to talk about it when they talk about it with you. But don't initiate the salary conversation. Do wait. But what you will need to do is follow directions. So you might be asked in any of the ways, and probably more than I even have on this slide, how to address salary. So let's talk quickly application form. So this could also include where they ask you to include your salary. Well, they could ask it to you in a variety of ways, but basically they ask you a question to be included on your cover letter. So it could be discuss your salary history. It could be what was your last base salary? What was your last two base salaries? What are your salary expectations? It could be asked in any form of duration, um, any way, basically. What you basically need to do is look at the question very carefully and specifically and answer exactly what they're asking. It could be on an online application form, on a paper application form, or in your cover letter. But if they do ask at this point in the process, you do need to answer the question. If you ignore it, you may end up getting in the no pile, basically, not even an interview if you choose to not answer it. If you lie, you can lose the offer at the end, and I've seen this happen to people. They've been off. I had a student, an MBA student a few years back, who was off by a few percent because he was anticipating a raise the following week. Got the offer 6 months later, right before he was going to start. They noticed the discrepancy and took the offer away from him. So do follow directions where they ask in this process. If you have any trouble at any point deciphering how or where or what to put or what the question is, feel free to utilize us at Career Services here at USD to help you get this done correctly. All right, so I'm going to just talk about the next two, the discussion and interview. Basically, what you first want to do is let them try not to be the one to name a number. All right, so let's go over this. They'll say, tell me about your salary expectations. And you say, thank you so much for asking. I was able to do some research, but one thing I wasn't able to find was the range of salary offered for this position. I would be grateful if you would share that with me. So that's a very nice way to engage the tossback tactic, where you are saying, hey, I'm armed with research and I'm ready to go, but you go first. So any way you're able to toss back and let them name a number first is going to be to your advantage. The number might be lower than what you're thinking, but at least then you have some time in your mind to process what they've said to you and adjust your position accordingly. Of course, you want to have done research to this point so that if somehow it is tossed back to you and they say, oh, wow, really, you weren't able to find salary information on this position, but you did research. What was it that you found in your research? Well, here you are, you're cornered, and you are going to have to answer that question. You could try some kind of toss-back tactic again, but then it might just get weird. So you can I would always suggest you name a range based on your research. Remember, if you are moving to, say you want to re-career, which means you want to get out of doing what you're doing now and move into something different, you're not always going to be compensated accordingly. So this is a very objective process. It can't necessarily be subjective to your salary history. That's sort of the front end of your research, where if you're thinking of re-careering, you'll want to look at some salary information on that new career you want to go into and decide if you can afford to do it or not. But what this is just objective data you'll share based on your research. So you name a range, and you need to remember that whatever you said was the low end of that range, you need to be willing to take. So that's basically how you would go about if you need to name a salary or a range in any point in a discussion or an interview. You can always, too, I mean, I always think it's a little safer to go a little bit higher than, let's say you discovered from the last example that a range is between 60 and 90,000. For you, if you have to name a range, say you're thinking between 70 and 90,000, because that way, if they were at 60, you're not so far off that you're going to be considered out of the market. And you'll immediately get a nonverbal reaction if you are off. They'll say 70, we were thinking more 55 to 60. And then that's your chance to say, based on my research, I was thinking and my salary history that 70 to 90 would be commensurate with my experience and the research I did, but I would be willing to entertain what your range is if we decide I'm the right candidate for the position. So that's up to you what to do at that point, but that would be a good way to get back at that. So you're welcome to, I mean, mainly the most important thing you can do in an interview. Would anyone like to chat in? Use the chat function and share what you think would be the most important. I like it. So Sarah says, be the best candidate. I love you already, Michelle, who says, prepare and research. Good. And you're both, I mean, and Cindy's, let's see what Cindy has to say as well. All right, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Show you're the right person for the job. And Cindy says, know your worth based on your work experience and what you value. Great answers. I love being part of this USD community. I love it. So I mean, I love these answers. They're all right. Thank the interview for their time and follow up. You guys are so prepared. I'm so excited. So the main thing is I think you're all right. I love all of these answers, but to really sum it up is to get them to want to hire you. That's it. I mean, the most important thing you can do in the interview process is have them make you the offer. They want you, they make you an offer, and you're the person for the job. And all of what you're saying and you've shared, thank you so much for sharing on the chat, all hopefully will lead to that or prepare you best for that offer. What's so important about that is when you go in there and you showcase your research and you're prepared and you know your value and your worth and you research a company and you're passionate about the company, you feel conviction that you're the right person for the job. Hopefully they'll feel that passion back and make you the offer. Because at that point, if you're a little bit, you have some differences in terms of these negotiation pieces and your compensation, when they know you're the right person for the job, they're going to want to make it mutually beneficial for you and them. They don't want to hire you knowing you're not going to be satisfied with the job. Even though an offer may come in low, it's not personal. It could be, it's usually an organization problem where the company's compensation is just under market. Maybe they haven't done their research, but it's not about you. At that point, when you get the offer, you're the one they want for the job. They could have gone through months and months of interviewing. I had one person go through 13 months of interviewing at Microsoft. So even maybe more than a year to determine you're the right candidate. They really want to give you a fair package that you'll be satisfied with, just like you do. So just remember, objective, not so subjective. Okay, so let's say now we're to the point where you have an offer. This could be, mostly it's on the phone or in person. I guess it could be on email too. I don't usually see that often. But what you want to do, let's just give the scenario that it's on the phone, is to just make sure you have an agenda and that you've done enough research that you're able to move the agenda forward and ask the questions you need. So one of the first pieces you might want to negotiate is existing deadlines. So this depends on other things you have going on. You may have other interviews that have happened and you're anticipating another offer. So what are their deadlines and do you need to negotiate that? I always would suggest they often have more urgency at this point. Usually they lag all along to get you that offer and then they say, we want it by Friday. This is where silence comes in handy and maybe even a sigh, a little drama, if any of you were theater majors here at USD, where you might say, Friday, and then let it sit a little bit longer than you normally would. And they'll mostly scramble and say something or let a sigh, oh, and then you can ask for a little more time than you need usually. You can say, well, is there any possibility if you say you just really wanted till Monday, but you can say, how about the following Friday? And again, let it sit in silence, and most likely they'll extend that deadline because you may have other things you need to follow up on. All right, so the other thing is we talked about negotiating deadlines. Definitely ask for it in writing because somebody, especially maybe in a smaller organization, could be cutting the gun a little and want to offer it to you and get excited without getting all the formal stuff done on the back end. So make sure you get that in writing as soon as you can. And this could be a point you are, if you feel comfortable, depending on how the conversation goes. You can ask if it's firm, if there's room for negotiation. What'll happen though, as you get a sense as they're talking through the offer, you'll get a sense of this. But if you do ask it at this point, they're most likely going to maybe want you to negotiate right then. So just be mindful if you do ask for that. It really just, you have to feel out the conversation if you're going to ask it at that point or not. Finally, what you don't want to do, don't feel like you have to negotiate right here. You want to get the facts. Don't feel like you have to accept it or turn it down. In fact, I really encourage you to not accept it, even if you're really excited right then. Some people do, and that's fine too, but there could be holes in the offer as we'll go through. So just get the information here. All right. And I'll just finally cover the last piece, high maintenance. So that is where you might be wanting to negotiate just a small portion of money, maybe just a few percent. So like I've seen someone who, let's just give the example, they had about a $66,000 offer. They threw a big stink about wanting to make $68,000, and actually the company rescinded the offer and took it away because they were really high maintenance and it was just a little bit of money and nothing else, and really they were really wanting to stand their ground on it, and at that point it just gets a little bit ridiculous. Okay, so Jonathan says he has to run. Yes, this lecture will be available on podcast in a few weeks, and Sarah will get that out, and I believe it'll be on the alumni site. And then I will talk about, I realize we're getting tight on time. We'll talk about counteroffers, so I'll try to go through the rest of this because this is sort of nuts and bolts you can go through on your own when these slides are available. When you're looking at your compensation package, these are the factors you want to look at: base, relocation, review period, and the other items I showed you in the column towards the beginning of the presentation. And here's a case study. I encourage you to read through it on your own time. But this sounds like a good offer, right? We're prepared to make you an offer for this position. It's in San Francisco. Here's the base salary, full benefits. Sounds great, but if you ask those right questions, tell me about relocation. Do you have a retirement contribution? When does healthcare start? How about vacation time or whatnot? And you find all this other information out, that can pose a real challenge. And these are things why you want to take time and not accept an offer necessarily on the spot. Go back and read a 3-paragraph Preproposal. This is really talking through those metrics and how to build a partnership as you're calling back in or seeing someone in person and renegotiating. And I always am going to teach personally low-risk negotiating tips. What I told you about the previous student who had the $66,000 offer, trying to get 68 and lost the offer, that's high-risk negotiating, just a little bit of money. So what I would do in terms of low-risk negotiating are the items on this. I mean, mainly, like I was trying to encourage you, it's a partnership. They've come to the point to want you in that position. You really like the company. This is trying to create a mutually beneficial relationship moving forward. Be very mindful of your language, and just be really grateful. I was helping a friend yesterday. I'm telling her, say thank you, say the challenges, and then say your possible solutions. Kind of like the compliment sandwich philosophy, right? Something nice, and then your challenges, and then something nice at the end. Because you also don't want to, uh, lose it based on offending the employer in any way. And Sarah, I see you're asking if I can hear you. I can't hear you. I see your mic is muted. Let me just, if you can unmute that. All right, so special circumstances, and then I just want to, we're almost to the end of the presentation. I'll talk briefly through these, let Sarah wrap up, and then I'm happy to stay on the call and address any other special circumstances you have in particular. So I did see a question come in about counter offers. Okay, so let's talk about juggling offers real quick. This is when you have one offer and you might be, or you have more than one offer basically, or you're closing in, you have one offer and you're closing in on final round interviews at some other organizations. This is a great situation to be in where honestly, several times in my career, I've been able to negotiate and bump up salary just based on having other offers on the table. I almost always try to apply to two sure things I'm going to get offers for because it's really an interesting situation. It can be stressful, but when they know you're wanted by someone else, you suddenly become more desirable at that organization. You do want to be open in your communication as you're going through juggling offers. The minute you get a firm offer from one firm, if you're closing interviews at another firm or two other firms, let them know, I have a firm offer with another organization. You may need to move your interview schedule up, or you may need to just get them going in their decision-making process. At the same time, you're trying to go back to the firm where you have the firm offer. That makes sense. And let them know, look, I am closing, I'm not going to be applying to additional jobs, but I would like to see the commitments through. I'm closing in interviews on two other organizations, and I need about 2 weeks to decide in good faith based on the commitments I had. That's a really good way to position it. Works well. Counter offers is when your organization, you tell them, I'm giving notice, I've accepted a new offer, and they come to you and say, oh, we'll give you a promotion and we'll give you more money. I would just encourage you to think back to those intangibles. What got you to that point anyway in your own organization? You probably, or I hope, have been communicating about the salary discrepancy or your need for a promotion, or sharing objective salary data on comparable positions, and they didn't do anything about it until right then when you're threatening to leave. That's a little bit hurtful, and people then also know in your organization that you were thinking about leaving. So again, that's where that intangible piece can come in. Rescinding offers means basically where you decline an offer after you accept it verbally, and that's an ethical problem. Once you accept an offer verbally and definitely in writing, you should cease all other job applications and not be searching. There could be a time if you think you're going to, I see this a lot, people are pretty certain they're going to get an offer and they stop job searching, and 9 times out of 10 that offer doesn't come in. So keep interviewing through your interview process, keep the momentum on your applications, but once you do accept an offer, you should stop looking. We'll talk about finding out you're underpaid and budget cuts. I mean, the underpaid has to do with needing a real heart-to-heart with your boss, being a partner, but being consistent in the objective data you're finding to try to increase your salary or your promotion or whatnot. And you may need to do this for some duration of time, 6 months, a year. It all depends on your boss's personality, how willing they're willing to move it up the chain of command and go to bat for you, so to speak. And so this is your own threshold of how long can I put up with this? How long am I going to try it? But what ends up really happening is you need, and dealing with budget cuts, your performance has gone up, your budget cuts have gone down, maybe you've taken furlough. Sometimes these things are out of your control, and it's the organization's to their fault. And I'm certain in these situations, you're not the only one unsatisfied. And I hate to say it, but sometimes you have to leave to come back. I had a guy leave and return to Motorola 6 times because every time he left Motorola, he got somewhere between a 25 and 30% salary increase. Big organizations have certain caps on this. They oftentimes won't give you an increase over 10 to 12%, even if it's a promotion. So it's very difficult once you're stuck and you came in at that salary to move up in great chunks for salary. And it does take sometimes leaving and coming back, going back for further education if you're recareering or whatever it may be. I hate to be the bird and bad news on the end, but that can happen. I talked about the situation where the person had to relocate to London. This is a time for you to be able to negotiate. So I would use the same tactics, same tools that I've shared to position and cost of living, salary structure, and such. And you may need to turn down the offer, and that's okay if you do. Make sure that you present other solutions. If you don't really want to turn down the offer, this is what I was dealing with my friend yesterday. She wasn't really ready to move to the new city. She was ready to call and decline the offer. I ended up convincing her to, she was willing to take a significant higher amount to move or to work from home in the city she was in at the salary they offered. And so I coached her through, okay, well, I can't take the offer as it stands, but here's a couple of options. Well, the CEO of the company is sitting on it for a few days now, and she may end up getting everything she wanted, which was basically staying in the same city she's in and commuting to work for that company. So if that situation doesn't work out for you and you have to turn down the offer, it's like a bad breakup, right? They're really let down. They chose you as a candidate. So be sure you're kind, potentially suggesting a new candidate, writing a letter of appreciation and such. Research tools you can go back to, and then Sarah would like to wrap up and share some final events and such. And I would encourage you, one other plug I want to have since I work for MBA programs, you're here in San Diego, that we still are accepting for fall if you're thinking you may be at that point in your career to think about education. I mean, I think all the USD grad programs are, but here in MBA, you still have time this summer if you want to think about taking your GMAT. And we do admissions for evening program in spring and fall. And this fall, we're accepting for our 3 programs, which is evening IMBA and full-time MBA, if that's something that is on your mind after this presentation. I'm happy to answer more questions individually. So thank you for your time. And Sarah, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you so much, Kara. That was an amazing presentation. I learned a lot as a 12-year veteran in the workforce. I want to thank everyone for your participation, and we'd like to again extend a special vote of gratitude to our presenter, Kara Weller. In addition, I would like to thank the Young Alumni Network's Programming Committee. And I also like to invite you to attend some of the alumni networking events. Tomorrow night we have a June Alumni Happy Hour hosted by the MBA program and the Alumni Association here in San Diego on campus at O'Toole's. Lastly, the recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint slides will be posted on the USD Alumni website about 1 week from today. So thank you again, and we're a little bit over our time, but if you have any questions, feel free to email the alumni at sandiego.edu, and I'll make sure that Kara gets those. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your day and a great week, and happy job hunting and salary negotiating.
Sarah, would you like me to take any questions now? I saw Amanda chatted one in.
Yeah, if you have time to answer a couple questions, I'll keep on recording and include that.